Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show for January 2nd, 20. And let me run a couple by you real quick. 20 fine teen, 20 incline teen, as if we are working towards something, right? We're on the incline. 20 brine teen. Maybe this year is the year we sort of brine in the lessons we learned from 2018 and come into 2020 just fully formed and salty. Saltier than ever. 20 wine teen. Maybe this is the year we finally just get everything off our chest. 20 shrine teen. Maybe this is the year we reflect and are grateful and build a shrine of thought and a shrine of goodwill for all of the great things in gaming. Or 20 dine teen. Maybe this is the year we dine on everything that is gaming until there's nothing left to eat.
James, be honest. How long did you spend today working on that?
No comment, but about an hour and a half.
No comment.
How about 20 rhyme teen, you English major? How did you miss that one? Give us some poetry.
Fuck. To be honest, about 10 minutes before this podcast, I went to rhyme.com and typed in the number 9. Just kind of went down the list there and whipped a couple up. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. If I'm being an optimist, I would say 20 incline teen. I think we have some work to do post 2018. It's a great year for PC gaming, but I think we have room to grow, and I like the upward slant of it. It's very evocative to me.
What about 20 top of the line teen? Because it's going to be the best year we've ever had.
That's pretty good also. 20 alkaline teen because batteries.
Right.
Or Alkaline Trio, that punk band.
Alkaline. I used to love Alkaline Trio.
2003.
God, I hope they're doing all right. Welcome to the PC Gamer Show. With me today, Wes Fenson. I typoed your name.
Oh, great,
Fuck
James.
me. All right, well, I'll fix that.
Just great.
I'll fix that.
Just great.
Wes Fenlon.
20 fucked it teen is what's going on so far.
I'm going to multitask here.
This podcast is in shambles.
Oh, my God. Well, my QA process is still in the works since we got these new logos and such. So forgive me, Wes. Please.
What I love is that the S and the L are not even near each other on the keyboard. They couldn't be further
away. How did I do that?
You would be in the number keys if you fucked up any harder.
Oh my gosh! All right. Well,
is it just gonna stay there for the whole show?
No, I'll export a new one real quick because I don't want to misrepresent you, Wes. I can't. It wouldn't be right.
Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
Hello. I'm here.
Wes Fenson. Wes Fenlon is here.
Talk about some PC games.
Yeah. Also with us, Steven Messner. How you doing, Steve?
Hello. I'm doing well. My name
Steven,
is
the haircut's
properly,
looking real good.
Oh, thank you. This is the first time. Okay, let me tell you about this. So this is the first time I've gotten my hair cut by someone who isn't my sister in over a decade.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Moving up in the world, 20 incline teen.
No offense to your sister, but I think it shows.
Oh, wait, what?
Like you have a very good haircut. So
it looks good.
Haley did. My sister is a fantastic hairstylist, which is partly why I was so adamant on getting her. But now she just had a baby before Christmas, so she is out of the hairstyling game temporarily. So I had to go to Tommy Guns.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
So it's called Tommy Guns, and man, I feel like barber shops have really stepped up their game because they had an iPad that I checked in on and requested the appointment, and then they had profiles for like which barber I wanted to select that were available.
Is it like a dating? Is this like a dating service? Like they all have cool pictures of themselves on there and a little bio
that you have to read, and then they had like it was like a man zone. So there's like a TV playing sports. You ever see the Man Zone episode of shoot, never mind. Who cares? Anyway, they had a mini fridge with beverages on hand. It was like a wine and dine experience. So I was kind of like, damn, I feel like this fear I have of getting my hair cut by anyone who I don't trust as my blood was maybe unfounded. There you go.
You learn something new every year, you know?
Fascinating.
James, you should try it sometime.
Haircuts? Nah, I gave up on those.
I love your hair. When it started getting longer, I remember in the back of my mind being like, "Is this intentional? Was it intentional, or did it just happen?"
It was intentional, sort of. Motivated partially by the average price of haircuts where I was living in the Bay Area. Was
sure.
Unless you went out of your way.
What's a haircut in the Bay Area cost?
It depends where you go. If you know a barber, if you know a good barber, like
right,
that's been around for a couple decades, then you can probably get them for like, I don't know, fairly cheap, like 15 to 20 ish. But near where I lived, they were like 30 to 40 minimum. So,
and that's U.S., which is double Canadian, basically.
Pretty rough. Is pretty rough, but
I couldn't.
But also, you know, it was like my hair at the time was resembling a little. It was too Proud Boyish for comfort, in my opinion. It was, and so I was like, all right, they've taken the haircut. I need to grow it out and eventually carve a canoe from a giant tree. So we'll see. This isn't permanent. But for now,
I love it.
I'm digging it. It's also fucking. You guys ever had hair before? A lot of hair?
Yeah, I used to have it down to my shoulders when I was younger.
You got to really take care of that shit. It's
I didn't, and it was. I look back at photos of that time, and it is embarrassing as hell.
Mine like really froze out. Like
I can see that.
Yeah,
you got that
real curly,
the curly fluff.
No, mine's very thin and very greasy. Like even at this length, I feel like I have to pay a lot of effort to maintain it. But like it down to shoulder length, like it just clung to the. I was definitely the kid in class that people were afraid to make fun of. I think because of what I looked like. So
because like you'd beat their asses.
No, because I looked unhinged. I would like burn their lock. They would come to class, or they would leave after class, and their locker would just be in flames.
This happened, or this is what you assume people thought was going to
I'll
happen?
never tell. It's a secret of my past. No, it's what people assumed. I'm taking it too far. I just looked really greasy. It also didn't help the fact that I had acne as a kid. Probably because my hair was so long and greasy, and it was on my face.
Just this little ecosystem.
All the
teen
pieces
ecosystem
are falling together.
Look,
why are we talking about this? This is a PC Gaming podcast, and we've been talking about haircuts for an alarmingly long amount of time.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Actually, there's a lot wrong with that because it's probably.
Sorry, everybody.
No, it's okay.
We're just giving James cover to fix my name.
I think I did it.
Oh yeah.
Actually, now
it looks good.
You know what? The thing is happening to me now that I've become so worried about misspelling shit when you make the occasional typo in this biz that every single word looks weird to me, including all of your names and the spelling of your names. Like it's like I'm seeing them for the first time and they all look wrong. It's freaking me out, man. But
there is a word for that sensation, and I can't think of it right now. But that is like a proper documented thing that can happen to people.
Makes sense. It's flipping me out right now. But video game. We were gone for a while. We had a holiday break, and I'm gonna guess you all played games for at least a portion of that time off. Is that right?
Yeah. Does Bandersnatch count?
Sure. It is sort of a thing, right?
I played a couple games.
Okay.
I played Bandersnatch.
Well, look, why don't we briefly? Did you watch Bandersnatch, Steven?
No. So, but I'm interested to hear about it because it was all the talk of Twitter.
So, for anyone tuning in who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about, Bandersnatch is a Black Mirror choose your own adventure. Experiment on Netflix. It plays out much like a choose your own adventure novel or book, if you've ever played with those, or something like a really simple Telltale style experience.
Which means almost all of your decisions end in you dying or failing miserably.
I used to love those, man. Especially the Goosebumps series had a good couple of choose your own adventure books. Good Star Wars
the
ones.
Decisions were so painfully arbitrary though, because you'd be like, "Do you want to go into the cave?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, I'll go into the cave."
Hell
and
yeah.
then it'd be like, "You go into a cave and a bear kills you." And it's like, okay,
throw the book.
Try
away.
again.
You lost, loser. Bandersnatch is sort of streaming services first foray, or at least like big foray into what a choose your own or adventure interactive movie might be. And I don't know, Wes, give me your hot take. We won't. It's it's pretty fresh, so we won't spoil it and spend too much time on it. But I kind of want to know.
Yeah,
how you felt.
I enjoyed it. I guess I probably felt a little lackluster by the end. I think it's interesting until you sort of start hitting the dead ends, and then it has a system in place to let you go back to kind of certain key decisions. But I think to see the entire like web of possibilities, you would have to just play all the way through from the beginning potentially, or be a little bit better than I was, at least at figuring out what you needed to change in some of those earlier moments to be able, like when you go back to them. So I think robbed myself of one of the ending paths that I would have liked to see. But at that point I like let it go to the credits, and then I couldn't jump back after that. So I was like, well, I'm not going to replay this whole thing to see this other pathway. So the endings are pretty, at least the ones that I saw it's Black Mirror. So, you know, you kind of know what you're going to be getting in that vein, but the setup is pretty cool. You're watching this kid who's trying to create a video game, a masterpiece video game in like 1986 or something like that. And all of the themes of the game and the themes of the meta commentary of like creating things with different paths and possibilities all like feed together. We just lose Steven.
He's coming back.
He's coming back. So it is a commentary on that kind of game design and you as the person controlling it on the, you know, the character, like all that stuff kind of comes together as you would expect it to in Black Mirror. It is not just a simple, straightforward adventure story.
Yeah, and I think most impressive to me, like you said, it's the story itself and some of that stuff. It's very Black Mirror-y in that it's like ham-fisted, woeful tales of technology that people read into too seriously. It's pulpy to me. It's pulp fiction to me. It's just like silly, fun, silly sci-fi fun. But what most impressive was just like the framework and the tech. I guess the tech framework. Like, it was pretty seamless and easy to use, and I'm excited to see what the hell. You know, I'm excited for this to maybe be a thing we can regularly write and talk about. And
I think my favorite thing about it, which you wouldn't see in Choose Your Own Adventure book, though you could do in a game, is that when you reset to a particular choice and replay through it to make a different choice, the events in the show can actually change. So the character, you know, because they'll shoot new footage, and so then you'll see a scene that looks like it's going to be the same scene that you already witnessed, except then a character reacts differently in a way that tells you like, oh shit, something in this reality, this timeline has been changed. And that's a pretty cool thing that in a Choose Your Own Adventure book, you could not go back to page 7 and like all of a sudden page 7 is different than it was before, you know?
Yep.
That was my favorite thing about it, I think.
Yep.
Sounds cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, check it out when you get a chance. It took us like, I don't know, 2 hours to do most of it. Movie length-ish.
Not bad either.
So
yeah, it's a fairly short actual story. So even if you'll probably spend an hour kind of replaying parts of it and an hour or so to kind of get from beginning to end. So it's not too bad. Pretty quick.
Some people in chat are mentioning, and I totally spaced this, but yeah, Netflix story mode, or excuse me, Minecraft story mode is on Netflix, which I believe uses sort of an earlier form of that technology or framework. So I don't mean to claim this is the first attempt at this kind of thing, but this is like, I think, their flagship sort of attempt at this kind of thing.
Yeah,
so.
It certainly seems like their biggest attempt.
Yeah, so cool. I'm excited to see it. Honestly, I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm excited to see it used in the more traditional stories, like action and stories that aren't too meta, because Black Mirror goes meta right away. As
Do you
usual.
think that the future of this is that Netflix will eventually get into dating sims? Because I mean, that's essentially what a dating sim is.
I mean,
what about it? A romance, choose your own romance.
I would not doubt it. I could see that.
What are the odds that they call it Netflix and chill?
Shut the fuck up.
We did it.
Let's move
We
on.
have to.
We're done. Oh, there goes Steven again. Bye, Steve.
Steven liked that idea so much he just had to leave.
He had to dip out. I'm gonna.
James, tell us about your vacation gaming highlight.
Yeah. While we wait, your face is gonna be a little big until Steven comes back. So sorry, people. we'll fix that in a sec. But yeah, what did I do over I didn't play a bunch. Well, actually, that's a total lie. I didn't play a ton of games over the break. I played a game pretty much, and that game is Red Dead Redemption 2. I pretty much my partner was working for about 5 days of the break that I had off, and so I would get up, walk around, do some exercise, yada yada, get some coffee, and then sit down and sort of do Red Dead for 8 hours. That's like a full-time job, essentially. It's not a PC game, I know, guys, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it probably will be a PC game eventually in the next year or two. And I just got to say, it's a very, very we got Stephen Beck, maybe. Great story, like incredible characters, and probably the Hauser's most tasteful writing yet. It treats the characters seriously in the time period, and it is not a dumb, shallow satire of early America. Some of there's like a little bit of that in some of the side quests and some of the margins, but they, for the most part, like actually treat American imperialism and capitalism with a critic's eye, and look at colonialism in a very straightforward way. And like, I don't know, it was really nice to basically rob and murder a bunch of evil rich people for 25 hours.
I missed the first part of this. Are we talking about West of Loathing?
I'm talking about Red Dead Redemption.
I know.
Okay. I thought you were serious. I was like, what did I...
A very dumb joke.
But yeah, I will say, like,
I'm just gonna leave again. I shouldn't have come back.
When it comes to PC, it's gonna be a great. People are gonna really like it. But I also want to say, and I think this sentiment is sort of emerging as more people play it. It is Rockstar's mission design is so fucking boring. By 3 hours in, you'll have sort of played and this is really reductive. You'll have like pretty much tested the height. It will have tested you as much as it's going to test you. Most action sequences involve some sort of scripted, bespoke thing that is like always impressive because holy shit, they animated this specific instance and had all of these models and dialogue and sound effects just for this like one thing you do like 20 hours into this game. But for the most part, you're just kind of like, it's just tragic because this is huge open world with some really interesting open world systems and weather and wildlife. It's like basically like Breath of the Wild levels of simulation, but it never ever gets as playful or asks the player to be as creative as a game like that does. All those
sounds like the perfect game for a PC mod scene.
Exactly. So I'm really hopeful about that. But if it's probably the most elaborate, and I say this in a kind way, it's the most elaborate, ambitious walking simulator ever made. It's a massive open world, but most of those story missions are just you doing a thing that is almost impossible to fail at. That is animated beautifully and very much on like a scripted linear path, but they are also some of the coolest scripted linear sequences I've maybe ever seen in games. So
yeah, the thing I've only played like a little bit of it, and I've been wanting to go back, but it's just such a slow, intimidatingly large game. But one of the things that I was so blown away by was like the first time my camp sort of had a party, and these scenes. I don't know if you've seen this before, Wes, or seen any of these cutscenes, but like they basically have these characters and everyone's getting drunk and singing songs, but like the way that it creates this party atmosphere. I'm almost having a hard time describing it, because every one of those characters has blocking. Like, it's like watching a play where 30 characters each have their own blocking and their own scripting, but like some of them are foreground, some of them are background, but that depends on you, the character, and how you're engaging with the party. So like you can sit down and like play guitar and sing campfire songs with like 4 characters, or you can get up and like watch 2 characters, like a girlfriend and a boyfriend, like get into an argument because one of them's like too drunk and said something stupid, and then you walk to another part of the camp and someone's like vomiting by themselves. But like each thing is worthy of your eye, so you kind of like walk through these scenes that are so immaculately blocked and scripted out that it's almost kind of like, I've just never seen anything like that in a game.
Reminds me of, I've never experienced this, but it's the closest comparison I can think of is gosh, what's it called? There's like a theatrical experience, and I think in New York, Sleep No More, yeah, where the play is essentially, there's, you know, a scripted sequence of events happening in something like an entire building, or I don't know exactly how it works, or like a hotel suite, and you just kind of walk around and engage with things as you see fit, and it reacts. It's crazy. It's like some of that stuff is just fucking crazy. It's clear like that a lot of people were working on this for a long time, probably too much, but it is like a singular thing. It every time I play it, I see something, like some detail that like knocks me on my butt. Even if it is sort of even if it feels, when you're actually like moving through the game, a bit limited for what it purports to be or appears to be. Anyway, we'll be having all these discussions in the future probably, but yeah, Red Dead 2 and like a little bit of Spider-Man, and I know console games, and dinking around some more on Thronebreaker because I like that game a lot. But yeah, those are my holiday highlights gaming wise. I looked at a Lego set. Someone got me a Lego set for Christmas, and I looked at it. I haven't done it yet, but otherwise.
What was it? What's it of?
It's a train. It's just like a creator train.
That's
pretty
cool.
excited about that. But
dude, as a kid, I had the electric Lego train set. Like, it actually was a running train. You put the tracks down and stuff. Shit was awesome.
That's amazing.
Real cool.
The coolest Lego thing
Like,
I had was the
actually was a
Wild
running
West one.
train.
Where you could slip the dynamite through a crack and it would pop the door off its hinges.
Oh, was that the fort? The Western Fort?
No, it was the jailhouse or the sheriff's office or whatever.
Oh, okay. I had the
like
fort that went along with that theme. It was also very cool.
To me, that was like Lego at its height, was the Wild West stuff.
That's pretty good shit. That's pretty good shit.
Yeah.
It's expensive now. It's depressing.
Yeah. So like, was Lego ever not expensive? Or
I don't know.
I had this question in my mind for a while, because I look at the prices now and I go, is that like relatively speaking what my parents were paying when they bought me Lego? Because if so, damn, sorry, mom and dad. Like, no.
I think it was always a bit on the pricey side, but the tie-in stuff, the branded stuff, which is now probably the dominant element of Lego, is definitely on the even more expensive.
Okay. Yeah, because I look at it now and I'm like, it takes like the breath out of me to think of buying, you know, a Lego set for my nephews or something like that.
It hurts. It hurts. Mm-hmm. What about you guys? What did you get up to this holiday? Any games? Wes, did you already talk about your games? I can't remember.
About Bandersnatch.
That's right. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Jay.
What else, Wes?
I did also fix 3 computers over my break, which I was proud of. You know, usually the trip home, it's just like, oh, okay, everybody's gonna ask me like, oh, could you take a look at my computer? Something's wrong with it, and that usually fills me with dread. But for some reason this year, I was like primed for it. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna solve every problem that the families have. So brought my dad a new hard drive because his old one crapped out. Ended up having to reinstall Windows because it got corrupted. Same thing happened on my uncle's computer. I thought his CPU was overheating and it was freezing up the PC. So we got a new cooler, and it was running kind of hot, but then apparently the Windows install was just borked. So they did something real nasty with the like Windows updates this fall. And I know a lot of people were having trouble installing the October update. It still hasn't rolled out to many PCs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was the same thing that it afflicted my family computers, but whatever it was, Windows was just totally busted on both of them and couldn't update itself. So I had to update those. And I slapped a new SSD into an old laptop and made it young and fast again. That was very satisfying. Went from taking like 5 minutes just to boot up to, 20 seconds or something.
Hell yeah. It's one of the most immediately satisfying upgrades to make is an SSD. Just feels good.
Such a big upgrade.
Yeah.
Cool. No other games in there though?
Not much. I played a little Monster Hunter when I got back from vacation. Played a little bit of Into the Breach. Introduced that to a family member. But pretty much had a away from the computer holiday, so didn't get a lot of gaming in.
It's all right. Cool. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of stuff, which we'll kind of talk about later.
Yeah.
Because it's actually now directly influenced my New Year resolution. But yeah, I played actually like a lot of Switch stuff, and then just a lot of my usual suspects like Warframe and World of Warcraft. And Battlefield 5 now has like wormed its way into probably the game I've played the most. I played 50 hours in December, which is a lot. On top of everything else. But the one thing that I did want to talk about was Gris, because this is like this game that launched so late in the year, and it's almost tragic that they did that, because it is such an obvious Game of the Year contender. For some kind of award, it should have won something, because this game is just stunning, and it is... I went into it very skeptical, because people compared it to the likes of Journey, which is that PlayStation 3, no longer exclusive, but that wonderful game by, can't think of that studio's name right now. But anyway, like that game company. It's sort of the hallmark for emotional, beautiful games, indie games. And so Gris, people were saying that, and I don't think it quite lives up to the emotional heights of Journey, but playing through it, I reached a point where I was like, oh damn, this game is actually brilliant, and I'm very much in love with it. So if you're not familiar with it, if you haven't seen it, it's one of those games where you have to see it. It's very sort of hand painted. The entire thing looks like it was painted in watercolor, and the game is it's an art game. Like, you play a girl who loses her voice, and then she falls into the depths of despair, and the world is all black and white. And as you it's a side-scrolling platform, and as you work through the world, you slowly start to unlock colors. And so as the color returns to the world, that also sort of changes how the game plays. And so, for example, like early on, you might unlock red, and then the world kind of takes on a more stony vibe, I guess. Like, it's almost like if you were playing Legend of Zelda, it would be like the Stone Temple. Kind of a vibe to it, and then you have like an ability that you unlock that kind of evokes that feeling, and then eventually like you'll get the blue color, and that adds the shades of blue to the world, and then you'll all have puzzles that might involve swimming or things like that. It's very clever in how it's designed and put together. It's not very long. Like, it took me maybe 6 hours to go through the whole thing, but it was just like this very beautiful, very serene game. Like, the music is sublime, the art is sublime, especially once you start getting the colors. At first I was a bit bored by it, and I was kind of like, I played like a session or two, and I was very much like, I don't really see the appeal, I don't see why people are talking about it. But once I started unlocking colors and sort of the world started filling in, there was moments frequently where I was just having to step back from these scenes and just go like, hot damn, is this not the prettiest game I've seen this year? And then coupled with the music and just sort of the very loose story, or the very abstract story that it has to tell, is quite good too. So yeah, I mean, it's on Switch, it's on PC, it's $20-ish depending on where you live. I think it is 100% worth it, especially if you like those kinds of very serene, contemplative games.
That's Gris. Gris?
I have no idea. It's one of those game names where I was like, the first time I had to say it out loud, I was kind of nervous.
What if the S is silent?
Yeah, Gree. I like it.
Like the cheese.
I think it's Gris. I'm not sure. But it's it's a bit of a shame that I feel like it's getting lost in the holiday stuff. I think I did see them tweeting saying that like, oh no, we've already like made a return on our investment, the indie developers.
Okay,
like,
good.
It's already profitable for them, which is good. I think obviously like just because it maybe isn't appearing on Game of the Year lists. Most outlets I've seen have covered it in some form or fashion, and I'm just here to say that, like, yeah, it's, if you like short indie games that are super beautiful and really fun to play too, like Gris is good.
Gris good.
Gris good. Yeah, that was the only thing that was like new that I played, other than the usual Battlefield and all that other stuff.
Cool. A lot of games came out sort of the last second. A lot of great little indie games. So be sure to don't miss those. Don't miss those. And we'll talk about, I think, some underrated PC games in just a minute. But first, I kind of want to recap for anyone who might have missed, or for our viewers, and just like talk about and explain and maybe disagree with or debate some of our Game of the Year awards for 2018. 2018. So I'm going to link to in chat here.
Good riddance to 2018.
Yeah, what a shitty year.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we gave out our awards over the course of the last couple of weeks, right? 2 weeks, something like that, including our personal picks. And I figured we'll just kind of run through what we chose, why we think it's deserving, and maybe you guys give me your own personal take, if you even have one, because I haven't played all these. And then I think, because a lot of these games I've already sort of spent time in the spotlight, we will really quickly run through some underrated PC games from a list we put together. And Wes, I know you contributed a ton to that list, so I'm sure you'll have a couple to mention.
Sure thing.
Right on. Best puzzle game, Return of the Obra Dinn. This was actually like one of the two games in our sort of final bracket, I think, or one of three or so. And personally, I like it more than our Game of the Year winner. But excellent. I'll link to it here. Excellent, wholly unique take on I think a murder mystery, or at least like 80 murders or whatever it is on that ship, or deaths. And something I think what I admire most about it is just that there are some very like gamey things in it, but a lot of these how you solve the mysteries is totally removed from is totally reliant on just like what you observe and what you are capable of noticing, and there's nothing really besides like some early tutorials and some more clearly marked clues that kind of lead you into a certain way of thinking. Beyond that, it's really up to you to just pay attention. And
yeah, that's what I love about Lucas Pope games, is that they're the few kind of games that really just rely fully on your faculties as the player in order to be successful in them. Like Papers, Please was the same. Can you memorize all of these sort of really obtuse rules and then apply them to a border management kind of thing, or border patrol? Whereas this, it's the same thing. Like, can you puzzle together the identity of 80 people who have all been murdered on a boat? And it's super intimidating. It was really good. That game was probably the most I've been invested in a game this year, in terms of just, I played it, and I was actually away for work. I was at like an EVE Online convention, and it was to the point where, like, outside of work hours, it was all I wanted to do, which is not what you'd think you would want to do when you're in Vegas for the weekend. But all I wanted to do was go back to my hotel room and just play a little bit more of Obra Dinn, and I crushed it over the weekend. And I can't remember the last time I played a game that was like that much of a that much of a page turner. Dab.
Someone clip it. Clip that receipt.
No one who dabs has ever said page turner. I'm sorry.
That's sick. Love it. Yeah.
Wes, did you play this yet?
I have not, but I actually bought it a few days ago.
All right.
And wanted to play it over the weekend, but just I've been waiting to play it with my girlfriend because we played Her Story together, which is maybe not a mechanically similar game, but I think it's thematically similar. and we've played some like point and click adventures and like Life is Strange, and so doing like mystery stuff where the input that of controlling the game is kind of secondary to just like the mental experience of figuring out what the hell is going on. I like playing those games together, so I want to do that with Return of the Obra Dinn. It's just we haven't gotten around to it yet. Cool. But I am excited to do so. Put my money down.
Right on. Let's move right on to Best RPG, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire. Any of you guys play this?
Yeah, I did. I didn't beat it, admittedly, but I played a good chunk of it. It's better. It's Pillars of Eternity 2, or Pillars of Eternity, but better. I liked the setting a lot more. Pillars of Eternity was very sort of generic fantasy. Here's a forest. It's full of elves. They had a very morbid take on it. That was really interesting, but I loved this idea of like, hey, we're going to set a game that's basically in the Caribbean. The fact that like one of the first places you go is sort of just, kind of that colonial Caribbean town, but then it imbues that with a lot of like the fantasy aesthetic. I thought worked really well. I thought the story was better. I think that my favorite thing about Pillars of Eternity is how much better Obsidian has gotten at taking those complex stories and distilling them in a way that's really easily read. I said as much in sort of the article talking about this game and why I voted it for RPG of the year, but just the way that like Pillars of Eternity 1 was really bad with throwing proper nouns your way, and then you just having to later go reference like a codex to try and figure out what that was, or what the history was, or who these characters are. Pillars of Eternity 2 is actually with Tyranny, which came out 2 years ago. They developed this new system where it's just tooltips. So like if it's a proper noun, you just mouse over it, and then it gives you like a 1-paragraph sort of primer on like what this thing was, and so it allows you to keep pace with the story much better, and it makes it infinitely more approachable to just be able to jump in. And even if you go back to the game after not playing for a couple months, which is what happens with these big RPGs for a lot of people, it's easy to jump back in and go like, oh, I remember who this god is, or I remember who this guy is, or what event happened here, because you can just quickly reference it. So that was kind of my thing. I was like, these guys, this is my favorite part about Pillars of Eternity, is how good they've gotten at taking these enormous novels of stories and distilling it in a way that makes a lot of sense and is really accessible. So cool. But everything else about it was good. I think the only thing that really blew was the pirate ship combat was not just good. Well, no, it was like it was very abstracted, so it's like taking place like in the pages of a book, and so you have like a graph showing your ship, and then you have like little icons showing where the enemy ship is, and then it's almost like a choose your own adventure novel, or like a dialogue tree. So it's like sail forward, and then it's like you sail forward 50 yards, and then you're like turn to port, and then it's like you turn to
sounds
port.
Sounds like a bad Star Trek game I made in high school in basic or something.
Yeah, like there's no sort of actual representation of the ship combat. It's all played out sort of in this dialogue tree. So it's boring, and for how much of a place it was given in the story and how often you're using it, it becomes a drag.
Gotcha.
I've heard Deadfire also has had some pretty nice updates over the past, over the course of the year. Like I know the original game, they did a lot of, not that it was in bad shape when it launched, but they just did a lot of patching to balance combat, deal with all kinds of little things here and there that they wanted to improve before the game came out, but couldn't, and things that fans gave input on. So I think Pillars 2 has had a similar, 2.0 patch, 3.0 patch, 4.0 patch that added like significantly to the base game. So for these kind of giant RPGs, I feel like playing them at launch is you playing the worst version of that game. Yeah. And it's not really a game that you need like the zeitgeist discussion experience around so much. So if you give it a year and play it later, like you're probably playing a much, much better game at that point. Yeah. Or at least a somewhat better game.
Yeah, and Chris86 in the chat says some of the DLC is out now, so if you're going to jump in, now might be a good time anyway. So let's run through a couple of these real quick. Best roguelike, Dead Cells. I played one run of that game and died, and I was like, I just don't have the energy to... I can appreciate it, I respect it, but I just don't have the energy to... Because I don't know what Bo said. Yeah, I played like 20 hours that over the weekend. I'm like, oh fuck, I can't do that. Like, I can't.
Yeah, I put 30 hours into it. It's good, but I totally appreciate where you're coming from, which is just this bullshit again. Playing games where you start over is like it's fun for one game, but then when it's an entire genre, it's like, please no.
Yeah, but all due respect, Dead Cells is gets
It is good.
a lot of praise that is well deserved.
Yeah.
Personally, it's not for me. But best ongoing game, Fortnite. I mean, I would have said this was a given, but in our discussions, it was surprising to see like this year there was a lot of great ongoing support for a lot of great games. And Steven, you were all behind Warframe.
Yeah, I was gonna say though, I like this entire Christmas break, I have actually like been racked with guilt that I didn't defend Warframe harder. Because in our Game of the Year discussions, we talked about it, and I made this great case for Warframe, and I think I was like kind of swaying some minds. And then James, you got up and you gave sort of your speech for why you thought Fortnite should win, and it converted me, but like only temporarily. That's how charming that speech was. An hour later, it wore off after we had made the decision, and I, for the weeks since then, have been like, I should have really gone to bat for Warframe, and I didn't.
Yeah,
it was the wrong choice.
I mean,
James just did a few non-copyright protected dances, and boom, converted.
Right. But I mean, like honestly, like it's a toss-up. I'm not invested in Warframe, but seeing the stuff that's come out of it, and they've continued to add to it. It's like, yeah. Of course.
It's a bad year though, because Fortnite is Fortnite. It's a pop culture sensation. Yeah. You know, if Fortnite is inspiring the Washington Post to make some of the cringiest tweets I've seen all year, like you can't deny the influence of Fortnite. Yep. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's just a bad year.
There were a lot of great games with ongoing development this year, for sure.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of defined
Fortnite, I think, has done something none of the other ones have done this past year, which was take something that would have fit into a pretty typical esports box, I think, at another developer, and just gone batshit crazy with the updates. You know, they are not afraid to just throw an ARG into their competitive multiplayer game or completely break the balance every month. You know, and nobody else is doing that.
It's pretty wild. It's going to be a real interesting year for that game, for sure. Let's move on. I don't want to run out of time here, but best racing game, Forza Horizon 4. I don't know. There's probably some sim games that were up against it, but I think overall, just a joyful car game. Best co-op game, Vermintide 2. You know, I didn't play didn't play as much as I wanted to, but Wes, you played a decent amount, yeah?
Yeah, I played a pretty good chunk of Vermintide 2, mostly with this one character. But one of the things I loved about this game was that because they added classes and some abilities that you can respec at any given time and a loot system, each character in the game can play really differently depending on how you configure them. So they're not just these static roles anymore that kind of just define like what weapon type you have. Like I played as a crazy melee berserker and also as like a tank using the same character. And just the melee combat
feels good.
Really fun. It's basic, you know, it's not like crazy combo-y, but it feels super satisfying, and the enemy variety is so much better than in the first game that it doesn't get old.
I thought their sort of modular difficulty system was really cool. The way that you could pick up those tomes and it would like limit the party's HP, so you could kind of, and then increase the rewards if you made it to the end of the level with the tomes. But then it was at a moment where like if you were obviously going to get wiped by like an enemy attack, you could drop the tome on the ground and immediately get that HP back. And it was kind of this way of deciding, you know, like this risk reward system I thought was really cool.
It is.
Agreed.
And it's a pretty healthy player base still, some good ongoing support. So
I enjoyed that game.
Yeah, I want to get back into it and play through those someday. Best open world game, and if I go too fast here, just stop me, guys, if you want to say a piece on these. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That's a big ass game. Steve, you reviewed that. That was probably fun to review.
That was the worst. It was the worst because it was such a strict deadline, and that is an enormous game. And it's an enormous game that does not want you to speed through it.
No.
As people covered a lot, like that was a game that a lot of people were like, buy the experience boost for $10 extra because it makes the game more enjoyable, which is such a crappy thing to have to tell people, but it's true. But yeah, that game is gorgeous. It's the best world that Ubisoft has ever made. It was huge, but also so detailed and varied. It was unparalleled.
And they've got a big, pretty ambitious DLC plan. You played the first one, yeah?
Yeah, I played the first one. It was good. It was, if you like Assassin's Creed story, it's just more of that. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm kind of like, oh, it's pulpy.
Yeah, I mean, I
But,
can get into that here and there.
yeah, I enjoyed it. I think like the post-launch support the stuff that they're doing for free is what's really impressive
Yes.
because they've added like a Diablo 3 style Paragon system where you basically have infinite levels now and you can just continue to level up your character. They've increased the level cap a bit too. There's all sorts of like weapons and armor. There's like all new systems. They added like a cosmetic armor system so you can wear the stats of one armor with the look of another armor, and all that stuff's free. So that's a game that even after you beat the main story has a significant amount of replay value to it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Best action game, Monster Hunter World. Well deserved, I'd say.
Hell yeah.
Wes, that's kind of been your game this year.
Yeah, I've played it more than anything else.
It's your
year.
first Monster Hunter too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a series that I had always kind of wanted to get into, but was never on a platform where I was willing to play it. I'm like, I don't want to play this shit on a 3DS with the, a circle pad thing. And like the Wii U version would have been better, but I wanted to play with friends, right? And I didn't want to have to deal with the like friend code system and those super weird lobbies that they had. So when they finally announced this one for PC, I was like, okay, this is the one I'm going to play. And I waited for it and it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, and just at the end of last year, an expansion was announced. Was it Icewind or Ice something?
Iceborne, I think.
Iceborne?
Yeah.
For right. Sometime this year. So, assuming it's a pretty hefty expansion, going to be hunting for a long time to come.
So, I'm really excited for that expansion.
Yeah.
I think they've said that it's sort of their G rank expansion. So like,
okay.
G rank is the ultra hard difficulty that comes with the Western releases usually. So like the West gets like Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, whereas Japan will get Monster Hunter 3 and then Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate.
Gotcha.
It's two different releases, but the West we just get the one, and so this one adds the best part about Monster Hunter is the G rank because that's when things get real insane, like one hit kills all across the board. It gets real brutal, but fun.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
We'll see.
It's not one hit kills, but it is like.
But it can be.
It can be.
As long as there's more good cat clothing, I'm into it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Best setting, Yakuza 0. I didn't play this. I like booted it up over the break, and I was like, I just got to the menu and sighed. Not because I was just like, I can't do an open world game right now.
Rude.
Another one. I want to so bad. Like I love what I've played of this series. I've played the first Yakuza and or the remake, the Kiwami, as it was called, remake, and it's great. And I hear Yakuza 0 is like way zanier and sillier and.
This is 80s Tokyo, right?
Yeah,
is the setting?
Yeah, I believe so. So, it was a big hit with our UK guys, so I trust their judgment on that one.
Yeah.
Best survival game, Subnautica.
Yeah.
I mean, very well deserved. I'd never finished it, but I got to the point in the story that compelled me to play it. That you, Steven, I think you, Pip, and Andy Kelly wrote about it.
Yeah.
Some pretty interesting stuff with storytelling.
Yeah.
And trust the player quite a bit.
Yeah. It does the story doesn't care if you pay attention to it or not. Yeah. So things will just happen and you can either be in the right place at the right time or you can just do your own thing. And I think that adds a lot of room for really interesting interpretations or engagement with the story. It was good. I didn't finish it either, to be honest. As much as I loved it and I loved the story, I had a real bad problem with how scary that game got, and I couldn't bring myself to get through it. But it hands down like the best survival game I've played probably ever, to be honest. I was real tired of that genre, and when I booted up Subnautica, it was real cynically because it is still a game where you are, punching things and then turning those things into other things.
Yep.
Very formulaic in that regard, but setting it underwater completely revitalized and made it much better.
Excellent.
Much more interesting.
Really cool world. Best sim, Frostpunk. I don't think either of you played this? No. So I played the first 5 or 6 hours. Chris Livingston wrote probably our best written review all year. At least from what I've read, it's an excellent review on this game. and yeah, I can't comment on it to the lengths with which he did, but go read that review. I'll link to it in chat, and like let that be all you need to decide whether you want to play it or not. But it's even the first 5 hours, I slowly found myself becoming a monster without realizing it, and I think it.
I like the part where you can make children work to death.
You like that, Wes?
Yeah.
That seems cool.
Seems pretty neat.
Weird. Yeah, Chris was saying that though. He said like, "Oh, I made a child crawl into a vent to like fix a radiator, and he lost both of his arms or something like that." I was like, "All right, that made me install that game. I just haven't played it, but it's sitting there."
I would say it's a rainy day game, but it's so fucking sad, guys. Like it's a hard one to recommend because it's not like life is bright and shiny all the time. Anyway, but if you are into sustained misery for the purposes of, I don't know, discovering more about what a monster you are, give it a shot. It's also just pretty and very fun. Best stealth game, Hitman 2. Either of you dip into Hitman 2 at all?
Hitman 2, I have not.
I played all of the episodes except one, the last one, which looks bonkers, but what else can I say? It's like it's a lot more of that the Hitman reboot, the episodic reboot. Some really really funny, intricate levels. It's an adventure game. It's like a slapstick adventure game, essentially. The stealth is very simple in it, and it is more about observation and creativity, and I think most of the joy for me is just seeing how sort of the puzzle boxes unfold and the humor with which they do, because it's surprising how funny those games are, and you just basically murder awful rich people, which is cathartic.
The complexity of those games is what's so enticing about them. I've never properly played a Hitman game, I think because it's a real I feel like it would be a real commitment for me, because it's not a game that I want to just mess around in and like, oh, I beat the level on, and I got like two stars out of 5 or whatever. I got it on the like loud assassin rating. Like, I want to be good at it, and be able to come up with a plan, execute this really intricate idea, and like flawlessly pull it off. And I know that the first 5-10 hours I put in that game, like, I am not gonna do that. I'm gonna probably suck at it, and I want to be able to pull off those masterpieces.
Yes.
And it's just like a commitment that I have not.
It takes some patience. Like, you'll spend 30 minutes just walking around to find out what the level is like, and that's but for instance, one of the levels, and this isn't even a spoiler, but there's it's so funny to me. You basically stumble into a hitman who has contracts for the same people you do, and he's just an idiot. He's just a total buffoon. And so basically one way to win the level is just basically secretly help him be competent.
I like that.
Yeah. He's always it's very funny. It becomes very self-aware in moments like that. But Hitman 2, best stealth game. Best story, The Red Strings Club. And I have not played this one. Have you guys played this one? We had a couple people lobby for it pretty hard, and passionately. So I'll link to that, and you can read their case. But it sounds pretty neat, and something like I think I would like. But I just haven't had time. A lot of games. But yeah, sorry, I've been taking up so much time, guys. Real quick, Wes, why don't I'm going to link to this underrated PC games piece we also wrote. And maybe choose one. Maybe it doesn't have to be on the list, but all of us choose sort of one underrated game or one you might have missed, and just shout it out to our listeners. Maybe they can pick it up.
Yeah, I wrote about a bunch of these games on the list, most of which I've played, a couple of which I haven't. I don't know which one I want to shout out. I guess I'll say Lethal League Blaze, which is probably less missed than most of the stuff on this list. Like, it sold pretty well on Steam, at least for a small indie murder Pong game. But that's what it is. It's Battle Pong. You're playing this super fast-paced fighting game / sport where you hit the ball back and forth at each other until it goes supersonic, and it's just really fun to play. Has an awesome street sense of style. Like the music is done by Jet Set Radio composer, so you can kind of derive the aesthetic from that information alone. It's a really fun game that you can now play online and play, you know, up to 4 people locally if you prefer online. When we played it online, we didn't have any issues with lag or anything, and it's like $15 or something, so you should buy it.
Yeah, that's one to have in the library. For me, I'll shout out Far Lone Sales. If you don't know this game, it's like a lot like Gris, actually, in maybe a little more linear, but it's a narrative side scroller where you're moving left to right for the most part in this post global climate disaster world, and the way you get across this bleak landscape is through this, or with this real shitty future car. It's got 2 big wheels and a sail up at the top, and you have to like pick up garbage as you find it along the road to keep it topped off. Every now and then you'll find a windy spot, and you have to you run around inside the vehicle, what's that game? Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, and kind of move around to the different parts. So you have to. There's some level of challenge, but you'll never die or lose or fail necessarily. But it's fun to interact with your car and sort of move through these beautiful, sad landscapes, set to some very, very nice music, with sort of a hopeful. I think there's an undercurrent of hope in all of its devastation, but it is not so. It is not like nauseatingly optimistic in the way that a lot of like cute indie games are to me. So I dig it. I dig it. A little bit of darkness with the light. Far Lone Sales. Steve, did you have an underrated game you want to shout out?
Yeah, it's actually not on this list, which I should fix that for you. But it was a game that I did discover slightly before the break, and I haven't finished it, but it was really, really good, which is Crosscode. It was an early access game that had been in early access for a couple of years, but released back in September. And it's a sort of a 2-down role-playing game in the vein of... what are those like action, like Secret of Mana, like action role-playing games from the SNES genre? To the point, like it's 16-bit graphics. It's really cool though because it's sort of set in this world where the game like the story itself is characters playing in an MMORPG. So the world you're exploring is actually like a virtual universe, and you're playing as your avatar. So it's a bit meta in that way, but it's got really, really fast, fun combat. It sort of mimics the cliches of MMOs, but because it's about an MMO, like it fits, and it can be kind of clever with the way it does that. And so, yeah, I was really enjoying it. The thing that blows my mind is like it was all programmed in HTML5 and JavaScript, which is really cool. So the game runs really well. You can play it in your browser. They have a demo on their website. So Crosscode, yeah, if you like sort of big sprawling RPGs and you miss those action RPGs like Secret of Mana, and I can't think of this other one from the SNES era, but anyway, if you like those types of games, it's definitely worth checking out. It's not like turn-based or anything like that. You're running around hacking and slashing stuff, but also leveling up stats, and it's got really fast and fun movement, so
yeah, and
worth checking out.
It made our best game music of 2018 list, so check out the soundtrack too. Yeah, let's move on. Sorry for taking so much time, guys. Talking about all these games, and speaking of all these games, this next Steven's topic here, kind of.
No more games. Games suck.
Games.
No. Yeah, I think I wanted to talk about with my little topic today, my New Year's resolution, and I wanted to see, like James, I know you expressed the same thing, and so I wanted to kind of throw it to our readers to see if any of them could sympathize. In fact, actually, we had a question that we'll get to later that I was looking at that also touches on it. But over the Christmas break, like I just had this revelation. Actually, it was at the end of the Christmas break, I had this revelation that I had wasted it. Going into the Christmas break, you get so excited because you're like, I'm gonna have all this free time, and so of course I had like a reading list of books I wanted to finish. I had TV shows I wanted to finish. All these things, all these ambitious plans I had, and instead I look back on the Christmas break and I spent 90% of it playing video games that I have played for far too long. Hundreds and hundreds of hours doing things that I wasn't necessarily enjoying, but was doing anyway because I felt obligated to. Games of a service, games where you're just grinding or logging in to get your daily chores done, like in World of Warcraft and stuff. And I just felt like I wasted my entire break doing this stuff. And it really upset me to the point where I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm not even enjoying my time I'm playing with these games. Not only that, but I also just felt like, because we do work in video games and we have to cover them, they are an important part of our lives. But I was like, before the break, I was even like waking up at like 6 a.m. to sneak in like 2 hours of games before work, where I just wanted to play like Warframe. And part of that was, I built a new computer and I got a new graphics card and I was excited about those things. But also just this addiction, for lack of a better word, to games. That I just found really troubling, and I couldn't remember the last time I finished a book and all this stuff. And so my New Year's resolution, I guess it's not like a resolution for the whole year, but what I decided was, coming back from the break, was that I was going to detox from games. So like for the entire month of January, I've settled on I am not going to play games unless I have to for work. Like if I'm explicitly assigned a game that I need to play.
Let's find him an RPG to review, a JRPG.
Yeah, an MMO. Oh, that would make me so sad. But what I wanted to do was eliminate the mindless time. And I feel like games as a service, like Destiny 2, World of Warcraft, Warframe, these games want to take up all your time. And they're so good at doing that and finding ways to motivate you to sacrifice your time. And so I was really upset by the balance where, it should be like, oh, I'm going to do all these chores that I have to do as an adult, and then if I have time left over, I'll play games. Whereas my life felt the inverse of that, which was, I'm going to play all the games that I want to play in a day, and if there's any time left over, maybe I'll clean up the house a bit and things like that, where I just wasn't happy with that balance. So I've done in the past, I drink a lot of coffee, but in the past I've done things like, oh, I'm going to quit coffee for 2 months and see how I feel. And I was always, really happy with the changes, even though I would eventually go back to drinking coffee anyway. And I want to do the same thing. I want to push the reset button on my relationship with games and just walk away from them for a month as best as I can.
Yeah.
And then see how I feel, both just in the quality of my life and my free time and my work-life balance. But then also, when I return to games, am I going to be enjoying them more and maybe able to appreciate them without, I don't know. I just want to be much more mindful about how I'm spending my time gaming.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are experiencing something similar, in particular after 2018, because we mentioned this briefly, but it was sort of the year games as a service or live games became. They've been around for a while in some form or another, but they really, really went mainstream in 2018 with. You saw it in Fortnite's weekly quests to do menial tasks to earn cosmetic awards that have sort of gained. The only thing you can purchase in that game, and the only signifier of value in that game are your cosmetic items. So if you put any cosmetic reward behind, no matter how small, a task in that game, it becomes. It feels like, oh, that's free money. Or that's
right.
Like money saved, and it's a game I cover pretty heavily for PC Gamer, but I also like it, and so that's like been a big challenge for me personally. Is like letting go of the impulse to feel like I have to get all that stuff.
Right.
Along with like Destiny 2, the Forsaken sort of reinvigorated my love for that game, and I found myself agreeing with everyone, thinking, wow, they really did. They made the boring shit better in this game, but it is still the boring shit. You're still running around the same arenas, sort of grinding out the same tasks.
They made it more rewarding.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what a lot of those games do now. It's like you're still doing boring shit, but the rewards are good, and so you're tricked into thinking you're having fun because you're earning a reward, but in the moment, like the moment to moment stuff isn't always the best. That's
Yeah, the shooting in Destiny like feels great, and
yeah,
I played Diablo 3 on Switch again this year, or for the first, I played it on Switch for the first time, but for like the millionth time in my life this year. I think that really put things into perspective. Um, with so many games, live games or games as a service happening now, it's almost impossible to ignore or it's not think about like how how valuable that is to my life, or how meaningful that
right.
time is being spent. Um,
Yeah, that's the thing. I felt like I had all these hobbies and dreams and aspirations for my life that were all just being pushed aside because I wanted Warframe cosmetics. And
Can I just say,
yeah,
for years I have been ragging on you and saying, Steven,
I
MMOs
know.
suck. MMOs are bad.
Is this your?
And you guys have just had
I told
this
you so
fucking
moment. I know.
this revelation.
So
This revelation. Maybe they're not good for me. What am I doing?
The specific moment that I had was when
So
I got
happy.
bored of playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo Classic that we had at my family's house. My nephews brought it over, and so we were playing it. And not only was I awful at that game, even though like abysmally bad, but I also found myself very quickly, like 15 minutes in, being like, why would I keep playing this? Because there's no meta objective. Like, and
Mario
I
skins.
was so I was so disturbed by the fact that I was feeling unmotivated to play this game because there wasn't some sort of meta objective. There was like back in the day, you would just play games because games were fun to play, and now I feel like it's so much more of a complex equation that goes into your want to continue playing a game. Especially, that's the thing, right? Is like maybe I play Warframe because I love Warframe to begin with, but at a certain point, Warframe has run its course, and the only thing that keeps me going is just wanting the cosmetics, or and so. Yeah, I want to. So basically, what I want to do for January is just reevaluate my relationship. I'm putting games on ice.
I don't think that's ever a bad thing. I think
No.
before I started working at PC Gamer, I would just go long periods of time not playing much. And I think Wes is probably a normal human here because he actually just doesn't play games if he's not interested.
Wes reads books. I've been to his house and I've seen his books. He reads them, folks.
Well, let's not go too far here. I've read a few last year. James probably read a lot more than I did. But my vice is like because we write about games for work or reading about them all the time. Most of the time after work, I'm just like, well, I'm gonna go watch TV for 7 hours straight and then go to bed. Like I, sometimes throw some exercise in there, but not a lot of actual sitting at my desk after work playing games. I really have to either psych myself up for it or just have a game that I'm playing with friends, and that's what always will pull me into it, is getting to hang out with my friends, and usually just on voice chat, and just chat while we're playing the same thing. And so Monster Hunter has been that for me, and then that gets me over the hump of getting in like the mood to play some games. So I'll play that, and then after that I'm like, okay, yeah, now I'm gonna jump into this single player game, like Dragon Quest. I played like 90 hours of that game. But otherwise, I will just be very tempted to go watch some TV or something.
Right.
I'm going to try to do a little less of that passive time wasting this year.
Yeah, I think that's something everyone can relate to, wasting too much time. It's easy now, in a way that I don't think it was.
There's an abundance of good media, like an absurd abundance. Remember when Breaking Bad was like, that everyone's like, it was the show. Holy shit. Or like Lost. Well, that was like maybe a little too early. But now it's just not the case. Now everywhere you
The
go.
other thing too is like there's an abundance of good media, but I feel like I'm consuming less of it. Like there's all these books, there's even good games coming out, and I'm not playing them because I'm spending 2 hours a night just pissing around on Reddit watching YouTube haikus, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why? So that's kind of ties into everything, which is like I just want to be vastly more mindful, and I want to change my habits so that when I have downtime, I don't reach for a phone or Reddit or a game that's a comfort game for me. I want to reach for a book or even, I don't mind watching TV. I don't think it's bad to watch TV, but new TV. I want to be expanding my horizons versus just gorging on comfort food.
We should
in all
make
my
one of
spare
those one a day like peel off calendars, and every day you have a page off, and it just says like, "Don't watch an unboxing video today.
What a
Do
help.
not do not waste your fucking life playing an MMO.
Yeah, that one would be the whole year.
You've seen
Every
enough
single
Vine
one.
compilations, like
Yeah.
just every day
It's
a little
true.
piece of advice."
Yeah.
And you know, I just want to like before we move on, I want to say like playing these games isn't necessarily, we're not like damning these games. I think Wes is damning
No.
MMOs, but there are like
I love
I mean,
Warframe.
jokingly though.
yeah, there are healthy
Yeah.
ways to play all of these things. I just think it's you know, it is the end of the year. It's a good time to like sort of look back on a lot of these games are like we are constantly being exposed to new means of design and marketing that are meant to keep us invested, and we might not even know it. And so, you know, 2019 sort of hit me like a brick wall in that way, and especially in regard to like games as a service and how they are trying to like make us perceive our time as a massive investment and make it seem as though like leaving behind a Warframe account, leaving behind a Fortnite account, or leaving behind, or just like letting them go for a while as like a loss. And that's not the case. Like none of that is the case, everyone. So like Steve.
You feel like you're running this collective marathon, and if you take a break, you're going to be way behind everyone else, and that's just not true.
It's not true. It's not true. So take stock, everyone, and just kind of make sure you're playing the stuff that means something to you.
Yeah, I
just
will report back in a month.
Don't play for the meta reward if the thing
Yeah.
you're actually doing does not satisfy you.
Yeah,
totally.
Is not fun on a clicks per endorphins level. I don't know.
Clicks per endorphins.
Clicks per endorphins.
Screw dollar per hour. That's the new metric.
You're clicking the mouse,
The new
and
PC
nothing
Gamer review
satisfying
scale.
is happening.
Yeah.
Forget it.
That's so funny. Yeah, so I'll report back in a month. I'll let you know my revelation. I'm fully expecting that I'll have gained superpowers. No FAP levels of
Oh, Jesus
intelligence.
Christ.
Let's move on.
Let's talk about this weird pirate game called Atlas by the Arc developers. So, not the smoothest launch. I've sort of been living under a rock, but even that, the din was loud enough underneath my rock to hear that the Atlas launch was less than stellar.
This is probably the biggest game on PC right now in terms of new stuff people are talking about, right? Like, obviously, it's nowhere near the size of Fortnite or CSGO or something, but of releases in the past couple weeks, this is the hot new game, which is almost, to me, like shocking based on the state it seems to have kind of launched in, and Steven has maybe not the highest impression of how fun it is to actually play at this moment.
Yeah. I'm a bit upset with it just because and that's probably my own fault, but like I was very excited for this game, and I knew it was going to be rough going into it for an early access game. But I guess ultimately with my problem with it is I'm just so disappointed because it's not like this is their first time in early access. So Atlas is developed by Studio Wildcard. They're under a new name, which is a bit weird. They're called Grape Shot Games for this one, but it is Studio Wildcard. It is the same developers, and it's built
As
using
Ark Survival Evolved, if we didn't say that.
Yeah,
we might have
sorry,
said that.
I should have clarified. As Ark, so it's the same developers as Ark Survival Evolved, and it's using the same engine and technology. So the moment you get into this game, you will immediately recognize that in a way, it almost feels like an expansion pack, and a lot of people are very critical, saying that it should have been, but who cares? But what's frustrating for me is that, like, okay, so you've built Ark Survival Evolved. That is the poster child for early access survival games that is massively successful. You have spent years and years and years iterating on its design, and now you're making a game that is very reminiscent of it, but obviously has a much bigger scope, and it misses so many of the fundamentals that they already solved in Ark. Like, they're reinventing the wheel in so many areas that is just so painfully frustrating to have to endure. And then on top of that, because it's an MMO, the stakes are much higher because it's a much greater investment of time. I guess Ark did have a bit of that. People could spend 100 hours making a base and then wake up one morning and find out that some trolls in the middle of the night went and ruined it all. But Atlas, it feels much more punishing to me right at the get-go. So yeah, it hasn't been a very smooth launch. They've had a lot of I was in day one and the server lag was unbearable. You would be rubber banding to the point where like you couldn't walk anywhere. I couldn't even go around a corner because I was snapping back and rubber banding so hard. And then I would die and I would lose all my items, and it was a nightmare trying to get off the servers. Only 2,400 people could play at one time because the starter zones, yeah, like these are the kind of decisions where you're like, did you not think about this ahead of time? So they have this massive map. It's huge. It takes like 36 hours, they've said, to sail from one end to the other, and I believe that.
Excuse me for interrupting, but isn't the way it works like there are actually separate servers that you're essentially sailing in between?
Right, and that's exactly how it works. So it's separate servers, and it's very similar to like EVE Online does the same thing. When you travel to a new solar system in EVE Online, you're basically going to a different node on a server. And so the people, you know, even if they say one universe, one server, but really it's everyone on their own little like instances. And it's not like you can see a million people in one place. So it's similar to EVE Online in that regard. The problem is that those servers only hold 150 people, and of the 128 servers or whatever that they have, only like 16 of them on launch day were designated as starter zones. And so each of those 16 servers has a 150 player cap. You can quickly do the math that within an instant that game filled up to capacity, and then there was no way for other people to get into the game until those people on the starter islands got high enough level that they could then sail off to other zones and populate other nearby servers, and then that would lower the population. But then that was taking 12 hours because people were stuck because of the server performance, and so it was just really bad. Like, it was impossible to play that game for a couple of days. Now it's equaled out, but I still think that this is a game that if you're going to play it, you have to be totally okay with the idea that you might wake up one day and hundreds of hours will have been erased, not necessarily by other players, but just by the developers doing things. So
I guess my big question is, why do you guys think that? Because like Wes, you were saying the player count is very high. This is like you said, the big game right now. And despite it being a broken mess that kind of falls short of, again, it's early access, but for a developer that made a game in early access and should have internalized and practiced a lot of what it learned from that, why are people persisting and playing it anyway? Why is it getting the traction it has and maintaining such interest? I don't get it.
I don't know. So survival games, just broadly, quite a popular genre, right? I mean, look at how successful Rust continues to be years after it came out. Ark's really popular. Games like Subnautica, which is not an online survival game, did really well for its more specific and limited scope. And I think this one really hits the way Ark kind of nailed the promise of like, it's the game where you can ride dinosaurs and fight on them, and sells that fantasy. This game is trying to really go for that big like pirate living universe sailing survival game fantasy that nothing has done on this scope before. So I think a lot of people will just buy in for that, and that's why there are so many people who have picked up the game and are fooling around with it. I don't quite know why you would keep playing it if the reports of really bad server lag and those kind of issues, and the fact that it's clearly early days and early access has a lot of balancing that needs to change and features that need to be added. Why so many people would be playing it in that state?
I'm not sure how it gets once you climb over that hump. And admittedly, I think the game just has a really ugly new player experience right now, and once you climb over it, I think there must be something that's interesting. Once you've built a big ship and you have your crew of friends and you're off sailing, I'm sure there's something enjoyable about it. I think what still ultimately is appealing about this game is that as someone that kind of dabbled in Ark, and Jules in the Twitch chat brought it up or referenced it, but I had that story where I got drugged and then was accused of murdering someone in an Ark role-playing server and stuff like that. Is that I think what Ark was really successful at doing was building these really vibrant communities, but the sort of tragedy of those of that was that those communities were then stuck on these tiny servers where their stories would live and die on that server, and no one would the wider audience might never have any knowledge of it unless someone were to tell that story. Or what Atlas does is, because all those servers are stitched together, all of those vibrant communities occupy this one world. And so I think that there is definitely still like a massive potential for this game in the fact that like you can form your band of rebels and other players have their band of rebels, and maybe you're like mortal rivals, and you tell this sort of living narrative as you play the game together. And I think that's a major appeal of the game.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And Ark, I mean, it was, even in its finished state, quote finished state, like, is a resource hog. It's messy and buggy and weird, but it is a great platform with a ton of customization options and expressive means for the players that make it a great place to hang out. And there is like a generation or a type of gamer who just wants a place to hang out and do the role playing, or just make a house, or do this and that. And that's like what a lot of people, I think a lot of people are just growing up now playing broken survival games. And it is just the normal. It's broken is sort of part of the arc of the experience, with investing in those things. And
I think there's one way that actually almost plays in its favor, in that this game's only like a week and a half old. People are still figuring out the possibility space of what you're going to be able to do in this game. And so saying something like one of the largest game worlds ever made, like, that will pull in a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And that will keep them playing through this sort of rough early version of this game, because they go like, oh, but I can imagine what's going to be possible in this game. It's so big, it's so vast, I'm going to be able to do anything. So at the beginning, if half the shit you can do doesn't really work that well, or the game doesn't run that well, you can kind of go, well, I can forgive that for now because it's just launch, it's really rough, but all the stuff I'm going to be able to do in the future is going to be so cool, and I want to work towards that and just exist in this space with other people and stake my claim early on,
And I think I think the game's going to get better. I'm obviously I came across as very negative about it, and I stand by that, but I think that it has nowhere to go but up. I think it is really frustrating that it almost feels like they didn't do any sort of quality assurance. No one played their own game before they launched it on Steam, because, like I was explaining to Wes earlier, but early on, you have to harvest resources to build the tools that then help you harvest resources faster, which is, a pretty basic loop in survival games. So you go up to a tree and you punch the tree and you get some wood, and then you can use that wood to like build a pick. But the problem is punching the tree damages you. And so as you're punching this tree and rocks to try and get resources, you're taking a lot of health damage. And early on, there's no real way to heal that damage because you don't have anything. You don't have any sort of medicine or anything like that, and eating doesn't really restore your stamina. So you're injuring yourself basically to the point where you get enough resources to build the hatchet, but then by the time you build the hatchet, you're so close to death that it actually almost doesn't make sense to just keep playing as that character. So then what you do is then you just kill yourself and then run back and find your body, and then that's the quickest way to heal. And that's obviously like a broken, like, it should not be designed that way. There was just a lot of like thoughtless decisions where punching trees and being damaged existed in Ark, but in Ark you accrued resources so quickly that it didn't really matter. You'd punch a tree a few times and you'd lose a little bit of health, but then you'd have what you need to get going. But in this, I think because it's an MMO, they've tried to slow down the progression as well. So sometimes I was punching trees for like 5 minutes before I'd get a single piece of wood, it felt like. That's a bit of an exaggeration. It was a long time. And so that kind of, those kinds of problems are really annoying. But I think, regardless of how people feel about Studio Wildcard, that's a studio that people love to hate, and Ark is a game that people love to shit talk, and that's I think they've deserved that reputation to an extent, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge that Ark has improved significantly over its time in early access. People want to say that those developers are incompetent because there's bugs that have been there since day one in Ark that are still there. The game still doesn't run that great, but they're an indie studio, and I think it's funny that a game like Kenshi comes out and is a resource hog and isn't pretty to look at, and it has a lot of half-working features, and people think it's so endearing and charming, but Ark is suddenly offensive. You know what I'm saying? Which is kind of getting into another topic. But anyway, I'm just saying that, like, Ark is a good game. They've improved it significantly. It is fun to play nowadays. I think Atlas has the same future.
Yeah, and I think just a rough launch maybe took people by surprise.
Really should not have pushed it out 2 days before Christmas.
No.
I mean, there was just no reason to do that, because they've clearly had to work almost pretty much the entire last 2 weeks. I'm sure some people got a few days off, but like they have put out a lot of, to the credit of the game, they've put out quite a few updates to it just since it came out to fix some of the worst issues. But those updates don't just magically appear out of nowhere. That means like people have been working long days and probably weekends to get this game in the state it is now of being more playable, and that really sucks for that to happen over the holidays. Just delay it a month, you would have been okay.
Agreed. Well, we're about out of time, and so I'm just going to save all of the Discord questions I got for the next show, which will be not next week, but the 16th. I am going away. I'm going to Far Cry 5 land for a week. So don't tune in next week. Or do, because maybe Steven or someone will be streaming something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll fill in for you.
2020, what did we decide on? Did we decide on 20 incline teen, 20 fine teen, brine teen, wine teen, shrine teen, dine teen, alkaline teen? Or are we just going to let it simmer for a week or two and come back to it? Should we just wait?
It's the year of Alkaline Trio, James. It's the year they're coming back.
It's got to happen. Reunion tour.
Can you imagine?
Let's see it. I got to go back and listen to them because
I hope they're all still alive.
I think they were good.
Really
they were like, a lot of those bands didn't age well, but I bet one of their... They when I imagine them in my mind, I imagine them sounding relatively palatable compared to, God, I don't know, who else? Rancid, MXPX. No,
oh my God, MXPX.
Less Than Jake.
POD.
POD. Oh my God, I saw POD had a new album. I was at the record store the other day.
Shut up. That was 13-year-old highly religious Steve. Was the POD's biggest fan.
God, what was their big hit? We can't do this. We can't do this right
Youth of a Nation.
Welcome to the PC Gamer POD cast.
I could still recite all the lyrics.
Youth
sad.
of a Nation, we are.
Yeah.
We are the youth of the nation, and we are the gamers of the nation, and we will triumph.
Up.
We will rise up. You cannot silence us. That's my new favorite subreddit is /r/gamers rise up. It's the best one.
It is. If you haven't been there, it is.
It's incredible. Yeah, what do we do now? This is where I say goodbye. You can always catch us usually every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time here on twitch.tv/PCGamer. Show goes up after the fact on youtube.com/PCGamer, or the audio version goes up on PCGamer.com/tag/podcast. You can find our whole archive of shows there as well. So until next week, shit, I didn't think of a closing phrase. I'll come back with one. I don't want to force it. I don't want to rush to a great tagline too early. But until then, have fun, I guess.
Play some PC games, everybody.
Play some PC games.
Or don't.
Take a break.
Do it.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to say game on, but actually just instead of game off.
Yeah.
How about this, James? How about live on?
Live on.
Oh,
live on.
I like that.
Never forget the power of living.
Normies only live one life, but gamers live millions of lives.
Okay, that's it. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.